It's so hard to find good help in production, folks. I tell you, it's terrible. Folks, welcome again to Financial Fitness with Patrick. I'm Patrick, as always, presented by Soaring Profits Media. And I've been saying this the last couple weeks. What a week, what a week, what a week. But it's been a crazy week. And I think we're at the top, folks. We are at the top of the mountain. It's over. It is down from here. We are seeing indicators this week that are showing us a catastrophic. We're at the edge. We are at the edge of an abysmal downward trend in the economy in the United States. And us as Canadians, we've been here since September. You know, I was talking with my beautiful partner, Jennifer Burnham-Grubbs, my co-host on WealthWise. I know you guys caught that episode earlier. Well, I guess it would be last week. This is going a little while from now. But WealthWise, a new show that we've done here with Soaring Profits Media. And that's what we dove into. We dove into the finite details, and why you guys are here with Financial Fitness tonight is to talk about some of those details. Jennifer and I really dove deep in it. She's a pro. She is working on that generational wealth creation with you and your family, your friends, your loved ones, and how to make sure that you're not stuck in this downtrend. We are seeing wild listings on the residential property market. We have to the exact height of January of 2008. Now, I know some of you aren't old enough to remember what 2008 meant to the economic world. Some of you are. Some of you are old enough to remember the bubble of the .com in the early 2000s. But we are now seeing residential listings back to the January 2008 timeframe. I want you to think about that for a second. Remember when you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't find a place to live, rental prices were astronomical. It's been crazy. This week, we have 490,000 new listings in the United States. We have interest rates at almost highs of our generational highs, and we have all-time record listings. What does that mean? Well, it means that people can't get rid of their house. They're trying to sell their house. They realize that if they're going to maximize their profitability, they've got to sell now. But where are the buyers? The buyers aren't showing up. That's why we're having these listings, right? They're sitting longer and they're adding up. If you look back into 2008, when we saw that, that was the sign of the things to come. That's when we had the real estate bubble in the United States, where we saw 30, 40, 50, 60% write-downs in property asset prices. But it's not just that. We saw General Mills this week. That's your cereal company, guys. That's your morning. Most important meal of the day is breakfast. They got crushed this week in earnings. They were saying that the consumer is not buying their name brand products anymore. They're going to cheaper alternatives. But hey, what's the Fed care? People are still buying something, right? They're buying no name products. So it can't be that bad. Well, we're seeing commodity prices slashed. Going back to the housing, lumber. All your homes are built with lumber, folks, and they will be for the foreseeable future. Down 25%, the cost of lumber this month. 25%. That should be concerning to people. Why? Because they're not building. Builders are saying, listen, we have all of these products now. We have these homes that are on the market. We have to figure out how to write down prices. And you're seeing cities like Austin, Texas, where 30%, we are seeing a lowering of price by 30% on new homes. That's not even like older market value homes. These are brand new homes. This is wild times. We saw NVIDIA CEO. We saw Michael Dell, $100 billion worth of stock has transacted through his account over the last 3 months. NVIDIA, they're selling at the top and they're getting out. This is catastrophic. And the problem that we're not seeing on the streets quite yet is that when people's feeling of their wealth starts to really take a kick. So right now we've got all-time stock highs. Tonight we're going to have the debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's going to be an interesting one, wherever you land politically. You know, hopefully your guy has a good night. I don't know which one of them has a plan to get us out of this. We see the Fed, they're tightening. They're looking at, hey, what are we going to do with interest rates? We can't really cut yet. They were supposed to cut in March. They were supposed to cut in April. They're supposed to cut in June. No signs yet. Here in Canada, we had our first set of cuts here last week, and they're celebrating it. Oh, it's great. We're the first G7 nation in the world to cut rates where we are. They're cutting for all the wrong reasons, folks. They're cutting out of desperation. The market is turning over. We are at the top. Call it now. I'm calling the top. NVIDIA, we are seeing massive swings. NVIDIA, the AI revolution that we've seen over the last 6 months, 12 months, they've ran up so far. You have this, like we talked with Wealthwise today with Jennifer Burnham Grubbs, you have this law of large numbers. You can't keep beating earnings by 100% and 100% and 100%. They're going to miss earnings at some point. And is that when this whole can of worms gets opened up and then we're forced to eat it? We're seeing credit card delinquencies on the consumer side that are skyrocketing. These are dangerous times. And I urge you to check out Wealthwise, where we dig a little deeper into it. Obviously, financial fitness, we do similar. But what happens when all these companies go bankrupt? Unemployment for the first time in a while is cracking up again. But those bankruptcy concerns are not just a corporate issue. They're sometimes a personal issue as well. And our guest today, I think she's a great advocate for individuals that have struggled through cancer survival with Triage Cancer. And she's helping people kind of meander what the costs of a cancer diagnosis look like. So Monica Bryant from Triage Cancer, thank you so much for joining us, Monica. I hope I didn't scare you with all my doom and gloom here in the first 5 minutes of this.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm hard to be scared.
That's good. I like that. That's a fantastic approach to your financial planning future. But so Monica, so Triage Cancer, you folks do a few things. First of all, you are a legal professional, so you have that background. You're not just pulling this out of your butt here. These are some real issues that you're seeing with clients. You're dealing with a big piece of your work is education. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about Triage Cancer, and first of all, why did you get involved with Triage Cancer? And then what are you folks doing on the education side and helping people to navigate after a catastrophic diagnosis, the big C? Nobody wants to hear that.
No, it's definitely a club that no one wants to be a part of. I am a cancer rights attorney, and I'm co-founder of Triage Cancer. And the co-founder and myself really felt like there was a gap in the cancer community in the educational piece around these legal topics. And I will tell you, at every cocktail party I've ever been at, someone says, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm a cancer rights attorney." And their response is, "What's that?"
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for sure.
Or, "What's legal about cancer?" And the answer is actually almost everything. From what drugs we have access to what insurance companies have to pay for, to what our employers do or don't have to do, to our ability to take time off, to finances, to estate planning, and everything in between. And so really having an understanding of some of these legal topics is imperative, not only to access the care that somebody needs, but be able to access that care and also maintain their financial wellness.
Well, and I think you bring up such a huge thing. And we here in Canada, we sort of take our health insurance for granted. James and I have sort of differing opinions. I tend to be a little bit more American leaning, and I'm very dissatisfied with our Canadian healthcare. James, God bless him, he's probably cursing and swearing in the background there right now, but he is very proud of our Canadian system. And I look at it from a perspective of, if you can pay, you should be able to get the absolute best healthcare you possibly can. And as a Canadian, we find many affluent individuals or even upper middle class individuals going to the United States. Where our system is fantastic is that we help the lower end of that financial spectrum, right? And that's a great system. What does that look like in deviation from the American system? You know, we had Obamacare, we had all the issues that went along with that. Again, wherever you land politically, how does that public system then in relationship and partnership with private payer insurance, how do those things come together at a cancer diagnosis?
I will say it is complicated and it's incredibly challenging to navigate. My opinion is that in the United States, it's not necessarily about having good insurance or bad insurance or a public system or a private system, because even someone with the very best health insurance that money can buy has to know how to navigate that health insurance. And that's really where we see people struggle, because in our system, there are all sorts of things collectively referred to as utilization management. So it's things like getting prior authorization. So having to go to the insurance company before getting your services. It's about denials of care. And what do you do if insurance denies that? And there are, in fact, laws and programs to address those issues, but people have to know what those laws and programs are. And none of us are taught how to navigate health insurance, ever. In fact, we often say that there should be a class in high school on insurance and finances. Because
absolutely. I absolutely agree. The finance side. And again, with us, we're sort of ignorant to the United States system in that regard, but it certainly feels like your finances, whether, you've got your 401k and you're maxing it out and that sort of deal, it should be directly related to what you're doing with your health. Because at some point in your life, every single American citizen is going to bump up against the system. So the idea of putting that in your, grade 11, your senior year, maybe not a bad idea. Are you folks working on programs trying to help educate other than just what you guys are doing with individuals that are coming to you? What does that look like?
So we as an organization are 12 years old, and we've been doing this work even longer than that. And we're constantly trying to find new ways to not only communicate the information, but expand the reach, but also to try to be less reactive. So a lot of what we do at Triage Cancer is helping people who are in crisis. And we want to be more proactive. And so we do that in a couple of different ways. We do a lot of educating of healthcare professionals, because those nurses and social workers and navigators are really on the front lines.
Right.
And the patients might be coming to them with offhanded comments about how hard work is right now, or they don't know how they're going to pay this bill. And so if we can provide those healthcare professionals with the knowledge and the tools to be able to navigate their patients better, that's going to be better outcomes for everybody.
Right. So do hospitals in the United States, do they have a social work type side of it as well, where you're able to engage with them at that level? Or are you dealing predominantly with the frontline nurses that are like, hey, the Smiths just came in here, got a catastrophic diagnosis, and now they're in this system, help them? Because I could see where you're coming from exactly. This seems very reactive. Nobody has this conversation until it's sort of, arbitrarily saying the words here, too late, right?
Yeah. My answer is it depends. It depends where somebody's getting treatment. So certainly there are places in the United States that have an incredible ecosystem that when someone's diagnosed, they are sort of surrounded by, and that could include social work and, occupational therapy and psychosocial care, financial help. There are also places where people are getting treatment in a community cancer center, and that's it. And I will say that we really do talk to people from all walks of life, from all, all different types of cancer diagnoses, all different types of financial health coming into this scenario. But what's interesting about it is the issues don't change. And I always tell this story about a day a few years ago where I happened to get on the phone with someone and he had a question. Turns out he was in the C-suite of a very well-known international company, and he had been diagnosed with cancer, and he had some questions. Right. I answered his questions. This man was very well off, but was obviously concerned. Yep. Hang up the phone. A couple hours later, I get on the phone with a single mother who lived in rural Alabama, and she had the exact same question.
Yeah. Well, it's wild to me to think that somebody's healthcare could bankrupt them. Like that is sort of an obtuse theory to Canadians, because we don't have that. So when you're advising these people, how do you walk them through that process? Like what does an intake look like with Monica?
Well, I would say first, it's not necessarily always just that their healthcare is bankrupting them. It's all the pieces. And so, oftentimes people will say, oh, it's the cost of treatment. It's the cost of the cancer drugs, or it's the cost of the hospital setting. And certainly that's a piece of the puzzle, but it's also about how insurance companies are behaving and what they are deciding to cover or not cover. It's also about what employers are doing. And what people know about their employment rights, because if they understand their employment rights, maybe they can work through treatment, right? Or maybe they can take time off from work that's job protected, so they're not going to lose their job. Right. But if they do that, how are they going to replace that lost income? Right. So that's about disability insurance. And so we think that the conversation has to be broader than just about the cost of care and how this is about medical bills. Because that isn't the only piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. And that's an interesting way of looking at it, right? When you step back and you go, okay, so you've been diagnosed. And now you're going to be 6, 8 months where your life has sort of had a wrench thrown into it. What does your day-to-day functional occupation, how does that work? So what sort of thing, what sort of education piece do you do around that? Because I imagine most people are somewhat ignorant of the entire process. They find themselves, 3 weeks ago, they were pretty healthy. They went to the doctor maybe for a checkup, and now, wow. What advice do you have for them when they first start having these conversations around their employment?
I think it's typically about information gathering. That's stage one. So whenever someone asks us a question, we generally have to answer with a whole bunch more questions, because in the United States, what they have access to is going to depend on what state they live in.
Sure.
How big is their employer? What type of employee are they? Because all of those questions are then going to just depend or determine what laws are going to apply.
Yeah.
And then it's about, well, what are your goals? So are the goals that you want to be able to actually take time off and completely stop working for a certain period of time? Maybe the goal is actually to work through treatment. Right. And I think that's a piece that sometimes healthcare professionals don't take into consideration. They just assume, well, of course you'd stop working to care for yourself. But for some people, they need to work, yes, whether that's for the paycheck or for the health insurance.
Yeah.
For some people, they want to work.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, like, James, if James got a diagnosis tomorrow, I couldn't hold him down, right? Like, he would be going 1,000 miles an hour. It would just be one of those things. And profiteers are there, James, the way he would be. And I would see that there's a lot of people that are like, well, I just need an accommodation. How can you work with me to accommodate as I roll through this? Again, I've owned businesses. I've employed people before, and I've never sort of ran into this. Again, we have our laws here in Canada that are a little bit different and a little bit more streamlined. That, they got maybe a little bit more heart than some of the other laws that we have in the States per se. When an employer is told that you have this diagnosis, what is some of the knee-jerk reactions that you've seen?
Well, I do want to just start by saying, for anyone who's listening, you don't have to tell your employer that you've been diagnosed with cancer. And that's also an important piece of this, because we're talking about a time when someone has lost a lot of control.
Absolutely. That is such a huge point, that, adding on that additional unknown, right? That's sort of, you got to take a second and take that in. You've just lost all of these controls. You don't know what your 6-month, 12-month, 18-month future looks like. And now I've got to go in and tell Tim. That's that it's in and of itself. That's very unique. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, not at all. I think it's just, I always want people to start with the premise of it's my choice.
Right.
And that there are certainly workarounds to be able to access the things that someone might need, like a reasonable accommodation or like time off, without necessarily disclosing the cancer itself.
Right.
And for some people, that's very, very important. So choice here is an important part of that. In terms of your original question, we see employer reactions across the spectrum. So we have heard incredible stories where people have bent over backwards to accommodate employees, keep them on the payroll, keep their benefits going I've talked to someone who stayed on for 18 months where they weren't at work, but they were still an employee and getting benefits. Yeah. We see the polar opposite too. Where someone is put on, performance improvement plans because they're not being a good enough employee. Yeah. And I do think this is also where the education piece comes back, because when an employee has the knowledge of what their rights are, but then also how to ask for those things, right, they are in a different position in the conversation with their employer. When they are coming in and saying, it's my understanding that I have this right under this law. This is what I'm looking for. How can we move forward? That's a very different conversation. And so the reactions from employers are across the board.
But again, going in, like you're saying, with that empowerment, and I think, you really hit home something for me there when you were saying about the total loss of control in so many aspects, that empowerment to be able to have those conversations, if you choose so, right? Whatever that looks like. That's super important. So Triage Cancer, you've been doing this a few years now, the education side. What happens if you get somebody that comes and they're like, we've got this horror story, obviously laws have been broken. What are you folks doing then, helping them meander the legal process of that as well?
So we are an educational organization and we are focused on providing that education. If someone comes to us and we believe that they need direct representation, whether that be they actually need someone to go to court with them, or maybe they need to file a complaint with a federal agency, we will help them figure out what their next steps are, but we don't actually provide that representation. It's just outside the scope of what we do. Right. And again, that comes back to the idea of trying to be more proactive and catch people further upstream. It's also part of the financial piece, because when we talk about financial health and the financial toxicity that a serious medical diagnosis can cause, some of that is around what decisions have you already made?
Right.
And particularly in the US, that could mean, well, what health insurance did you pick?
Yeah.
Did you pick the one with the cheapest monthly premium and you didn't look at any of the other pieces? That might be a bad situation for you. And so with this education piece, and we're trying to work in communities and, train community health workers who are out in the communities spreading information, so that every year when you get to make new choices for health insurance, maybe you can make different choices.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an interesting aspect is that, the cheapest is not always the best. It's not always the worst, but it's not always the best. But yeah, choosing something that's going to truly fit your needs there. Now, do you have any partnerships? I know you're a nonprofit. Do you have any partnerships with organizations or agencies that provide insurance, anything like that, where you're recommending or?
We do not. We have partnerships with about 180 national cancer organizations. We believe really firmly that we need to stay in our lane. There are so many wonderful groups out there doing incredible work that, we're stronger together. We don't suggest health insurance policies. We don't, frankly, even ever tell someone what to do. Right. What our goal is to give people all of the information that they need, help them understand the pros and cons of various decisions. Right. And then with that knowledge, they can move forward and make the best decisions for them. But I'll tell you, 96% of Americans don't even know what the four most basic words in health insurance are. They don't know the words.
Yeah. What are they? What are the four basic? Let's hear them.
So you have your monthly premium, which is how much you're going to pay monthly just to have health insurance. You have your annual deductible, which is what you have to pay first out of pocket each year before your health insurance kicks in. You have your co-insurance, which is a percentage, and that's the difference between what you're responsible for paying for your healthcare and what your insurance is responsible for paying. And then you might have an out-of-pocket maximum. Mm. And frankly, in the United States, the out-of-pocket maximum is the most important thing for you to know. Right. Because in a worst case scenario, that is the most you are going to pay out of pocket for your care.
Yeah, it's so wild. And as we're having these conversations, right, to us, there's no insurance body in Canada that even remotely resembles that. Like I've got multifamily residential properties. There's nothing that I have like that. $1,000 deductible. I can pretty much have my multi-million-dollar properties rebuilt. Like, it's crazy. Like it is sort of an odd thing that we've allowed that. Now, on the flip side, you folks are the innovators of healthcare. So, you pay a certain amount for that, I suppose, to have the best care potentially in the world. And on the flip side, there's a group of people that need to access that sometimes, unfortunately, have troubles and can't do it. So Triage Cancer, you guys are doing a fantastic job with getting the advocacy out there, but you're a not-for-profit. So where are you folks generating your money from? And, my chicken little scare when we first jumped on here about where the changing economic climate that we're seeing, how does that affect what you folks are doing? Is there government grants and opportunities for you that way, as well as the education side? Or are you predominantly looking for money from individuals in the community to help and support the education side?
We are funded through grants, sponsorships of our educational events, and individual donations. Those grants come from a variety of sources. So sometimes they are community foundations, sometimes they are the advocacy arms of pharmaceutical companies. Cool. And that is primarily how we are funded. We do certainly get some individual donations, but at us specifically as a nonprofit, generally the population that we are working with are not in a position to be huge financial donors to the organization. Yeah,
no, and it's sort of wild. I'm glad to hear that the pharmaceutical industry is stepping up in that. And I can see where it's a two-way street for them, is that if you're able to advocate for the treatment and care that you feel that you should be having to get insurance to cover it, that makes it, that's a total no-brainer for me. It's that education and the advocacy piece that I'm so glad that there's organizations out there like what you folks are doing. The bankruptcy side of it, again, is so mind-blowing to me. Like the idea that you can go bankrupt, you can potentially lose your employment, you can have the majority of the important things of your day-to-day life being stripped away from you because of a catastrophic diagnosis. It's a little bit foreign. It's a little bit foreign as a Canadian. What do you say to people out there when they receive that diagnosis? What is your first sort of like, understandable, but it's going to be okay? How do you sort of get that message across?
I think the first message, if I were ever in the position to talk to someone the moment after diagnosis, it would be stop and take a deep breath, right? Like, this is the moment to actually spend some time gathering information.
Right.
And that information certainly could be about the medical component to it, because there might be different treatment options that they could choose from. And so that's not a decision you want to make rashly, but also hold on any other decisions. Hold on telling your boss. Hold off on quitting your job. You know, this is the moment where you need to do the information gathering. And honestly, that's where the name of the organization comes from.
I love that.
We try to give people the information that they need so that they can figure out what needs to be dealt with right now and what can maybe wait until later, which is the definition of triage.
There you go. Yeah, Monica, it's a beautiful thing that you folks are doing. Honestly, it's God's work type stuff. Like, you're giving people hope, you're giving people light at the end of the tunnel, and the information to go and do it. Tell us a little bit about how people get in touch with you at Triage Cancer, and any upcoming stuff you have going on. Kind of give us a little bit of plug, and we'll go from there.
So anyone can reach out to us via our website at triagecancer.org. That's a great starting point. We have a number of ways that we provide this education. We have educational events that are all free to attend. They're both in person and online, so anyone from anywhere can join us. We do those throughout the year, and they take various formats. All you have to do is register on our website. We also have a plethora of materials, and those materials come in different forms. So they're short form, 1 to 4 page quick guides that just give you a snapshot of a topic. There's longer guides. We know that not everyone learns in the same way. So we have things like animated videos where you can get the information. So the website's a really great place to start. And our website is organized in different ways, including by topic. So if someone was interested, let's say, in employment stuff, they can go to our employment page and see everything that we have on that. But then in the United States, it does matter where you live. And so we also have those resources organized by location as well. So the website's a great place to start.
Well, I think it's fantastic. The website's very easy, very user-friendly. Like she was saying, the videos that are on there do make it super easy. Even for a silly Canadian like myself, I can meander through there and get the information I need. Monica, it is a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so important what you're doing and that education piece. Again, I could only imagine. I recently lost my father to cancer, 2 years ago now. I was his primary caregiver, and I remember those hard talks, those hard walks out of doctors' offices. I could only imagine adding a catastrophic financial situation to it. Thank God we were in a position where, it wasn't that being the case. But I could only imagine that when people talk to you, they are in a cave of despair. And you seem to, you and Triage Cancer are a light at the end of the tunnel. I thank you so much for joining us. Profiteers out there, as always, new show today. Wealthwise just launched tonight in about, 6:30? In about 2 hours, we're going to be covering the debate until YouTube pulls us off. You guys will be not seeing this until next week, but we'll see what we can do. Monica, again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. Let's make some money together, guys.